One aspect I think we have to consider is the not just this specific amendment, but the growing attempt to undermine the ability to implement the reforms incorporated in the Dodd-Frank legislation, which are actually critical, not just to protecting consumers, but also providing a foundation for an effective financial system in the United States, which is the foundation of, I believe, a growing and thriving economy. But this specific amendment deals with the interchange fees or swipe fees. And the first thing I think we have to recognize is that these are really hidden fees. They're charged in each transaction that a consumer makes using a debit card. Every time you swipe the card, which serves as an electronic check, there is a fee. But the consumer doesn't see this fee. And so basically, you have a disguised price. And if the price is disguised, then the consumer doesn't have a real indication of the cost. And if he doesn't know the cost, then that affects the rational economic decisions that we assume consumers are making every time they make an economic decision. But at the end of the day, despite the fact that the consumer is unaware of these fees, he or she ends up paying them. In higher prices for gas, for milk. In fact, they've been paying these higher prices for the privilege of using a debit card for years and years and years. Now, the Durbin interchange provision of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Law sought to make these interchange fees transparent and public for the very first time. It requires that for transactions involving debit cards issued by banks with assets over $10 billion, the largest banks, not the community banks, not the credit unions, but the largest banks, that these interchange fees set by the card network on behalf of its issuing banks must be reasonable and proportional to the amount it costs to the issuer to conduct the transaction. And now this is the law of the land. And the Federal Reserve was given the responsibility of implementing the law through regulations, and they're on the verge of publishing those regulations. Now, Senator Durbin's proposed this provision because businesses like in my home state of Rhode Island, Cumberland Farms, the old convenience store chain that I grew up with, it is the largest convenience store chain in Rhode Island. It is the quintessential small business, family-owned business, pays almost as much in these hidden fees as it earns each year in profits. These fees roughly equal their profits. Now, interchange fees for Cumberland Farms are their second largest expense. It's not the milk, it's not the gasoline, it's not a lot of things. It is their second largest expense. And despite the fact that the total number of gallons of gasoline, for example, that they've sold has remained flat, the interchange fees have increased 270%, from $13 million in 2003 to a projected $48 million this year. Again, prices are flat for commodities like gasoline, relatively speaking, or number of gallons, rather. The price is going up, but the number of gallons is flat, but their fees have gone up almost 270%. Now, the Cumberland Farms CEO calls this increase a runaway train. When gasoline was $2 per gallon, interchange fees were about 3 cents per gallon. Now that gas prices are about $4 per gallon, interchange fees have increased to 5 cents a gallon. So for the same 15-gallon fill-up, the hidden fees increased 63%. So the motorist, the local Rhode Island who's filling up at the local corner gas station, is paying 63% in their fees on top of the increase in the price of gasoline. The actual debit card services haven't changed, but because the price of gas increased, the fees almost doubled. That's a pretty good deal for Visa and MasterCard and the banks. Unfortunately, as these fees continue to increase, they increase gas prices, they prevent investment, they preclude new hiring. Indeed, the convenience store industry reports that overall it pays more in these fees than it's earning in profits. That's overall across the board, across the country. There's another example, a very local company, a very small business, Chocolate Delicacy in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. It pays a swipe fee on every piece of chocolate sold when paid by a debit or gift card, which amounts to 60% of their purchases. And now the owner, Marie Schaller, told me that she feels like she has no choice but to pay the fee. If I don't, I would lose over half of my sales. The growing swipe fees have meant a cutback in hiring for Marie. At the Beehive Cafe, located in Bristol, Rhode Island, a cup of coffee costs $1.75. The swipe fee is 15 cents. Because card fees are hidden and there's no availability to negotiate them, owner Jennifer Cavallero said, Visa and MasterCard have inserted themselves into every single transaction that takes place, equating to a tax on commerce. This is not free enterprise. The small business person is trapped. So why don't supermarkets, drugstores, and other merchants negotiate to pay less? Well, they really can't. The fees are set by Visa and MasterCard and the card networks. They have no bargaining power. And most merchants are left with no choice but to accept the cards. You can't play if you don't pay. I think any further delay in the rules to require reasonable swipe fees only harms small businesses and, in the end, the consumer. Now, our market system only works well if merchants and consumers have the information they need to make informed choices. And that was what was at the heart of this provision in the Dodd-Frank Act. And that's what is at the heart, I believe, of the Dodd-Frank proposal overall, which is to provide better information, more transparency, whether it be credit card or debit cards or it be complicated derivatives. Because armed with better information, individual consumers and individual merchants can make better choices about economic decisions that will accrue to the benefit of all of us. And with that, Madam President, I would yield the floor.